Today's video will discuss chapter 3.3, rate of change and slope. And this is our second day doing this section, so we're going to really focus in on the slope part this time. So yesterday's video we talked about rate of change, and today we're really going to focus on slope, and here is your formula for slope. M, which is what we're calling slope in this formula, equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now you may want to pause the video at this point and write down this formula. This is a formula you're going to use pretty much all year. It's one that I can almost guarantee you will have memorized, even though I will never force you to memorize it on a test. So we use it so often that it gets to a point where I don't have to quiz you on it. You know this formula. Okay, but so it's y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Keep in mind that these are subscript, so they're below the number. They are not exponents, which would be up here. Okay, so this is basically saying whatever we're calling the second point, which are the 2's, and we're calling the first point the 1's. So we're going to practice how to find slope of a line that goes through 2 points. Here's our first one. The easiest, or I guess the most basic way to solve this is to call this x1 and this y1, and we're going to call this x2, and we're going to call this y2. Notice the 2's have to go together, the 1's have to go together. Okay, and remember that a point is x comma y or x comma y. It does not matter if you make this x2 y2 and then this one would be x1 y1. So a lot of times as you get more comfortable with this, you may choose to make these the 2's and these the 1's, and that's totally fine. Now my formula for slope was y2, so that's this one, negative 3, minus y1, which is 4, over x2, which is 2, minus x1. So on purpose, I'm going to write it as minus negative 3. Now, keep in mind that at this point I'm going to want to think about simplifying. And so negative 3 minus 4 is not negative 1. Negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. And then 2 minus negative 3. Two negatives become a positive, so this is really the same as 2 plus 3. And so this would be 5. So my slope would be negative 7 over 5, negative 7/5. Now some people will write this with the negative in front, right? So the whole thing is negative, and that's fine too. Just keep in mind that one of these two numbers or the number as a fraction is negative. Either way is fine. I would tell you not to change it to negative 1 2/5. Okay, well that is not wrong. It's easier for us to leave slope as an improper fraction because we're going to use this as rise over run. So if you remember what we talked about rise over run last year, that's the idea that we're rising negative 7 and running 5. Right? And if you do this, the rise and run is less obvious. And then even worse than that would be to do this. And I know how you guys love decimals because your calculator loves decimals, but this is even more difficult to see rise and run. So do not switch it to a decimal. Once you get this, you're done. You don't need to type that into the calculator. All right, let's try another one. Line going through negative 3, negative 1, and 2, negative 1. So I want to find the slope of this line. So M equals, we're going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. If you want, and you're feeling comfortable, do the opposite of me. Make these your 2's, x2, y2, and make these your 1's, x1, y1. See if you come up with the same answer as I do. So I'm going to go y1, negative 1, minus, y2, negative 1, minus y1, which is also negative 1, over x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is negative 3. So similar to the problem we did before. Now this is negative 1 minus negative 1. So remember, these two negatives become a positive. So it's negative 1 plus 1. So that means I got a 0 on top. 2 minus negative 3. These two negatives become a positive. This is now 5. I got 0/5. Okay, so my slope, since 0/5 is the same as 0, you could write my slope as 0. This answer would also be correct. This one's probably a little bit more precise, and those of you that are going to place into geometry, you want to start to kind of get comfortable going from here to there. But keep in mind that this just means this is a line that rises 0 and runs 5. So if you think about what this line might look like, this is a line that is never rising but is always running. So you got a line that's just going to go straight across like this. It's going to be parallel to the x-axis. All right, now let's take another possible example. Looking for the slope of a line that passes through -2, 4 and -2, -3. So using my formula for slope, I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. If I were you, I would definitely label the points. I think it really eliminates some careless errors that people make. A lot of times people will subtract x and y, and if you write them all down, it really kind of makes your life significantly easier. I'm going to go y2, which is -3, minus y1, which is 4. And this is over x2, which is -2, minus x1, which is -2 also. So my slope here is going to become -3 minus 4, which is -7. I'm putting this over -2, and these become positive. -2 plus 2, which is 0. Now, here's where a lot of people kind of make a mistake. They think this is 0, but this is not 0. I'm going to come back to that in a second. This was 0. So if this is 0, 0 divided by 5, then 5 divided by 0 would not be 0. Okay, so the question is, what is this? If you take your calculator, you divide -7 divided by 0, typically you'll get something like an error or domain unknown, something like that. So the idea is that you can't have a 0 as a denominator. You learned this a long time ago. So this, my answer is undefined. Okay, and that's my final answer. Do not write this. Right? Sorry, that should be the empty set. Right? Do not write the empty set. Do not write 0, because the empty set says something different. 0 is actually a number. In fact, that was the answer to our last problem. So both of these would be wrong. The answer is undefined. It has to be undefined. Now, what does this line look like? I want you to think of a line that is rising -7, so is rising, but doesn't run. What does a line that rises but never runs look like? It would be straight up and down. This would be parallel to the y-axis. So every line that has an undefined slope goes straight up and down. It's a vertical line. All right, now, since you are in algebra class, you know that all we need to do is have one unknown. And so typically, when you've found slope, they've given you the 4 coordinates, and they've asked you to find the slope. In this particular problem, what they're doing is they're giving us the slope and 3 of the coordinates, and we have to find the 4th. So the idea is find r, which is here, so that the line through 1, 4 and -5, comma r has a slope of 1/3. So I'm going to use my formula, which is m, so my slope, which is 1/3, equals, and I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. It's going to be y2, which is r minus 4, and this is over -5 minus 1. Now, the question is, I need to solve for r. I need to get r by itself. So if you think back to chapter 2, which is what we worked on, how could I solve this problem? So what I'm going to end up doing is simplifying this, and then what I want to do is cross multiply. And so if you think of this as going to become -5 minus 1, that's -6. So we go -6 times 1 will give me this side, and 3 times r minus 4 is going to be on that side. So I got a new board for us. And so what I'm going to do is the distributive property here. And so it's -6 times 1 is -6 equals 3 times r, which is 3r. 3 times -4, this is -12. Now remember, my goal is to get r by itself. So I got to get rid of this -12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 12 and I'm going to add it to both sides. And my red is out. Let's see if my green's still there. No, we'll stay with the blue. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. This cancels out. So I'm left with 3r over here equals Negative 6 plus 12, this is positive 6. Then, again, I'm trying to get r by itself, so I need to take the number that's in front of the r and divide it to both sides. And so this is r equals 2. So my final answer is r is 2. Now keep in mind, let's come back to the original problem. What that's saying is that this number here would need to be a 2 in order to make the slope of this line 1/3. Right? We did all that work to get ourselves to here. All right, that's all I got for you from section 3.3. The key thing here is to make sure that y, the change in y, is always on top. So y2 minus y1 needs to be on top, x2 minus x1 on bottom. The most common mistake is to put the x's on top and the y's on the bottom. And then make sure that you are subtracting the 2 from the 1. So remember, the y2 is always, if you're doing what we were just doing, it is the last value of the set of numbers. Don't forget to do the problems on the bottom of this page. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in class.